I'm a fan of the fantasy setting for RPGs, but sometimes I need to change the scenery from the sword and sorcery style. So I'd go into something completely different such as the cyberpunk genre, but every time I find myself wanting to have both mixed together. If only we could have a setting that mixed both fantasy and cyberpunk together, wouldn't that just be It's Just Shadowrun? Shadowrun, a tabletop RPG that was first published in 1989 by FASA, with subsequent editions published over the years, with 6th edition first published in 2019 by Catalyst Game Labs. Shadowrun is a setting that takes fantasy, cyberpunk, and crime and mixes them together to create a world of magic, corporate greed, elves, and cyberware. My experience with Shadowrun was 5th edition, where I played an elf shaman that made the news in universe regarding a haunted convenience store that he himself haunted with his own magic. It was both extremely fun and extremely confusing. I don't know if I can tell you how the game was properly played back then. I had a lot of help with the game master. If this is your first time hearing about Shadowrun, then honestly that's fair. I don't think Shadowrun is as popular today as it has been in the past. You'd be more likely to hear more about Dungeons & Dragons, Warhammer, Pathfinder, even Vampire the Masquerade, as Shadowrun exists running in the shadows or something. Not that people don't play it, but I've seen that it doesn't get the same amount of love mainstream as the other settings. On this channel though, we mostly talk about video games, and there have been some Shadowrun video games in the past. The last one we received was 8 years ago with Shadowrun Hong Kong, a CRPG developed by Harebrained Schemes, but the Shadowrun games have gone all the way back to '93 with Shadowrun on the NES, and then you have Shadowrun on the Sega Genesis in '94, Shadowrun on the Mega CD in Japan in '96, that's a visual novel, and Shadowrun on the Xbox 360 and PC in 2007, which it didn't do so well and was a team-based FPS. And I know, they're all named the same thing. No, they're all different games. The game we'll be talking about today, however, is one developed by Harebrained Schemes on the PC and was then released on the iOS and Android, and then the Switch, and both current and previous generations of PlayStation and Xbox consoles. Harebrained Schemes was founded by Jordan Wiseman and Mitch Gettleman, with Jordan being one of the original founders of FASA and one of the creators of Shadowrun. The studio has developed 3 Shadowrun games in total: Returns, Dragonfall, and Hong Kong, each one being about a year apart, but today we'll be looking at Shadowrun Returns. The game was funded entirely through Kickstarter with a goal of $400,000. They ended up making $1.8 million in total, so I would guess that's pretty successful. The game we got is an isometric 3D CRPG where we play as a custom Shadowrunner in Seattle in 2054. When creating a character, you can pick from one of the 5 metahuman types, and you get given the option of picking an archetype, which is your class. The game, however, doesn't really have a class system as per D&D or Pathfinder, and character progression is done through spending karma, which act as experience points. You spend your karma to upgrade your ability scores and to upgrade your skills relating to that ability. You're also able to dip into skills outside of the usual scope of your archetype. For example, if you're a street samurai, which is the game's version of the fighter class, and you want to have a bit of hacking in your skill set, you can spend points to become a better hacker, but be careful because if you spread yourself too thin, it can just fuck up your character. The other metahuman types have different maximum stat caps on their ability scores. For example, elves would have the highest quickness and charisma, dwarves would have the highest willpower, but orcs would have lower charisma, and trolls as well would have lower intelligence, which means that a troll hacker may not be the best thing, but honestly I think you can make it work. Returns comes with one campaign already pre-packaged, Dead Man's Switch, but also it has the tools necessary for people to create and share their own custom campaigns, but for now we'll only be talking about the main one. The story starts off in a rundown apartment where one day you receive a call from a former crew member who is letting you know that they got killed. They're aware this would happen and at some point recorded a message to ask you to find his killer and offers you a large amount of money. You take up the job and you head to Seattle and find out that this wasn't a one-time killing, but rather a part of a spree done by someone known as the Emerald City Ripper. You travel from locale to locale to bring this killer to justice and end up finding out that this goes much deeper than it seems. It's a great introduction to the setting and a rather well-written story, if not a bit anticlimactic at the end. The story itself is not very long, only about 10 hours or so, and that's even on a relaxed playthrough as each map change sets up different instances to move the story forward. It's also very linear with no branching paths, any choices are negligible in the grand scheme of things, and for this game that's honestly fine. It doesn't set itself up to be grander than it actually is, though some may be annoyed by this, especially at a few moments in the game. The game's combat may honestly be the weakest part of it though, and it's very simple and reminiscent of XCOM where you take into account cover and you just fire your weapon. My setup involves using assault rifles, and I had a caster buff me, and I was able to easily deal with encounters with very little effort as I was able to fire my gun about 3 times in one turn. The other downside is that there are no permanent members. Yeah, there are recurring characters that may join you in your mission, but dialogue with them is rather limited. You are able to hire mercenaries to help you in your chapter mission, but you aren't really able to talk to them or know more about them apart from a small blurb regarding them. In truth, there's not really much to say about this game apart from it's okay. It feels more like it's a proof of concept game, like a test concept to see if they could set up a Shadowrun game, and it's definitely one that shows that it can be set up to make much better and greater things in the future. And this becomes more evident if you were to play the other 2 Shadowrun games done by harebrained schemes. Shadowrun Dragonfall was originally a DLC released for Returns, given that they have broken past the 1.5 million stretch goal that they've set. It was then released as a standalone title with Dragonfall Director's Cuts, which improved upon many aspects from Returns. You now have a permanent cast of party members, you can talk to them outside of missions, they're now more useful than just being in combat, the story is longer and much more interesting, the enemy AI has also been improved so combat becomes a bit more challenging, and people would honestly tell you that it's better to skip Returns overall and to play either Dragonfall or Hong Kong, and they would be right. I'd personally pick Hong Kong over Dragonfall because the orcs in that game don't look like, well, this, but some would say that Dragonfall is the superior one of the 2. In the end, it's really up to you and what you decide. Shadowrun Hong Kong was the final game received in the Shadowrun setting, and I'm sad that we haven't had more since then. Other systems have had multiple other games made in their setting, such as D&D having the Icewind Dale series, Neverwinter Nights series, the Neverwinter MMO, and even Dungeons & Dragons Online, and we also have the Baldur's Gate series. Warhammer itself has had multiple games made with either Warhammer Fantasy, Age of Sigmar, and 40k. I would guess it's due to the fact that the series itself isn't as popular as I said earlier in the video, but there could be another reason for that. So there are 2 owners that I've found to the rights of the Shadowrun IP, Catalyst Game Labs and Microsoft, but they don't technically own the same IP. Catalyst Game Labs owns the RPG rights, which allows them to publish more rulebooks for the tabletop game, and Microsoft owns the digital rights, which take into account the video games. It's honestly upsetting though that the last game was made 8 years ago. This is a setting where you can have the topics of corporate greed and low life and high tech while also having the fantasy aspect added to it. I understand that the tabletop rules may also be confusing, but you also won't need to follow those rules in designing the game, given that the game devs will probably not have the rights to the tabletop rules to implement them. Other games have done this as well. Even this trilogy doesn't really follow any of the tabletop rules and just creates a more streamlined custom rule set. Hopefully in the near future, some game developers will see the potential in this setting and are able to try their hand at making another Shadowrun video game, especially given the recent successes of Baldur's Gate 3 and Cyberpunk 2077, 2 games where if you just mix them together would probably give you Shadowrun. As for me, I'm gonna sit back, hope this RPG gets made so I can romance some hot orc ladies. Hey everyone, I want to say thank you for watching the video. I hope to introduce people to Shadowrun with this video, because whenever I want to talk about it with some people, they mostly don't know that the setting exists. So hopefully this is a decent introduction, or at least revealing this setting to you, so that you can go and take a look and find out more as well, because I think there's a lot of potential in this setting and one that I hope to see more of. As usual, if you liked the video, then leave a like. If you didn't like it, then leave a dislike. And if you want to actually see more of my stuff, then there should be some videos on screen right now but if you want to see what I do in the future, then feel free to subscribe. If you were playing Shadowrun in the past, or plan to play one of these games in the future, what would you play? Let me know, because I would probably go back and pick an orc mage, something that doesn't really seem to fit, because I don't think orcs can be decent mages, but it's nice to kind of break out of the mold once in a while. Anyway, take care everyone, I'll catch you all next time, and remember that I appreciate you.